Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. I am your host, Christy Haberman. I am glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of our community. A few disclaimers before we get started. I am a licensed therapist. However, this podcast is not to be considered mental health therapy or counseling. It is for entertainment purposes only and is not associated with my counseling practice, Christy Haberman Counseling Services. Thanks for showing up. Welcome to Grieving Insomniacs. This is your host, Christy Haberman, and I decided that we were going to talk about what I want you to know about grief. So if someone was interviewing me and they asked me the question, if I hadn't lost a child, what would you want me to know? So the first thing that I would want someone to know is the life that you knew before the loss is not going to be the same life that you had after. That person that you knew is gone. And in their place is a broken human. And on some days, you'll wonder if you're really human at all. You'll be wondering if you're actually an animal, because that's what you'll feel like. And that's what you'll react like. Because it's so traumatic. And just like an animal does when it's wounded, we lash out. We bite those that are closest to us because we hurt, and we hurt badly. Whatever it is you think would be helpful to say, don't say it. Just don't say it. By far had people telling me unhelpful advice. Far more than I had people telling me helpful advice. The other thing I think you need to know is that it's a solitary journey. No one can crawl into our skin and understand what we're going through because it's unimaginable. And they have different life experiences than we do. And I kind of had this expectation that there would be people that were there for me that would be able to walk this path with me. And they can't. And it's been incredibly lonely. But in some ways, I was really outgoing. I thought everybody was my friend. That's not true anymore. I hold myself back because I don't want to interact with people. Because I've been hurt so badly. Not only by Christopher's death, but by the people that I thought loved and cared for me. But they couldn't be there in a way that I needed them to be there. I don't think that this is a unique experience. I may be talking about myself here, but I know there's other people out there that have the same experiences that I have. The pain of losing a child is beyond the imagination of the average human being. And so they can't be there with us because they want to deny, right? Denial is a protective mechanism. So when they see us in so much pain, they don't want to believe that they could be us. The next day they could be us. 2 years from now they could be us. And they don't want to face that truth. They want to believe that it will not be as bad for them. So we need to understand that the denial is more about their inability to cope with our own emotions, and not anything to do with us. But it leaves us still feeling the same way, which is alone. So that's the critical number one thing that I think people need to know that haven't lost a child, that there is literally a wall between me and everyone else, and it's called the loss of a child. And behind this wall is all my suffering, all my memories, everything that I now keep hitting. So last week I went to a training out of state, and somebody asked me the dreaded question, how many children do you have? And I answered one, and I felt really, really bad, and I had to apologize to Christopher. But in that moment, a decision was made. And I always say this, a decision was made. And the decision was made to protect myself. The protecting myself had become more important than acknowledging that Christopher had died. And it's sad. It's sad that our world has come to that. But I've told people that I've lost a child and they turn away from me and they never talk to me again, which only increases the loneliness. the misunderstandings that develop between two people. And when it comes to losing a child, there's a lot of them. During this same trip out of town, I drove through my birth state of Nebraska. Now, I was huge into genealogy before Christopher died. So as I'm driving through these places that my family history, we had history there, I just wondered how our family history contributed to the fact that Christopher died. Like, why was it him? I used to be very spiritual and very into the New Age movement. But you know what the New Age movement would tell me about the loss of my son? They would say that there is a lesson in that for me. It just makes me angry to think about this. Someone would think the death of my son was a lesson. Why would his life have to end to teach me something? That seems very biblical in a sense. I don't believe that kind of thinking. And then also there's people that say karma. I had somebody tell me that once. There's another podcast clear back in the beginning where a really good friend of mine said that Christopher died because of all the bad things I'd done in my life. And that was a hard one to swallow. Again, as if his dying had something to do with me. It became easier over time to just hide behind my wall. And I admire people that are out there with it, that think that that's the most important thing, is to make sure that their children are remembered. They are also lonely because not everybody's going to be accepting of them either. So the one thing that I would want you to know is that it's lonely. It is lonely, and there's no understanding except by other grieving moms. And even that can be hard sometimes. I see it on Instagram, and I know it's part of the human condition to judge other people. I just wish that it didn't exist. Because what we need to do for each other, no matter how we grieve, is to put our arms around each other and say, I get it. You're hurting. Let me sit with you a while. And really, that's all that Instagram is that we're sitting with each other while we express our feelings about our grief. That's another thing that I would like you to know, is that emotional regulation is out the window. I was thinking today I was paying my bills, and I was helping Christopher when he was in school, right before he died. I still have his bank account information in my bank, and I remembered a conversation I had with him. And it just hurt. Because he thought that I was worried about helping him pay for school, and I wasn't. And it's just sad. So I'm apologizing to him for that. And it made me really, really sad. That's the thing that I think people don't understand, is that one day I can talk about Christopher. I can tell you. In fact, I told somebody one-on-one, the same person that I said I had one child. Another day I told her that Christopher had died. That day I was able to say that Christopher had died. The day before, I couldn't say it. I just couldn't say it. Because I was going to cry. And it was a professional meeting, and you can't cry. You just can't. People look down on you. And I know all of you feel like maybe I'm doing a disservice to Christopher by not acknowledging him. But one thing I know about Christopher is that he would want me to take care of myself first. I had this conversation with my younger son, actually. And I said something on Facebook. And Colin got a little upset with me, and he says to me, Mom, I don't need our relationship to be Facebook validated. And I thought, true fact. Absolutely true fact. So you won't be see me posting about Happy Sunday. My son is the best. One, he got off Facebook. But two, he's right. I don't need to post on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else in order to acknowledge the relationship I have with my children. And the same goes for Christopher being deceased. Just because I don't talk about him doesn't mean he's not present in my life. My choices are just different than other people's choices. The other thing that I would want you to know about grief, if you had never lost a child, and this conversation is specifically for the loss of a child, you lose your health too, your emotional health. Human body was not meant to have the amount of stress that occurred when you lose a child. Your body's just not meant for it. And if you have a genetic disposition for an illness, it pops out after that huge stressful event. And it's like, boom. And there it is. So not only are you mourning who you were before, health. I can't do nearly what I used to do, emotionally or physically. Just can't. And it's been tough having to accept that because I see other people my age doing things that I wish that I could do. And I have to accept that I can't, because if I push myself, then I just get sicker. And especially in those first years when I was so depressed. Like so depressed. That's the other thing that people don't understand. Yeah, I would have met the criteria for depression for sure. However, how you treated me per se would be significantly different because I was dealing with grief. Counselor perspective, but also my own perspective, is you have to go into those feelings and feel them. And I call it making friends with them. Because what people tend to do is they tend to run from them. They hurt so badly. I cannot emphasize this enough. I know and understand how badly it hurts. So for some people, the idea of going in and making friends with their feelings is repulsive. You want me to do what? Because sometimes that's the first time in their life they were being forced to feel their feelings because they worked it away, did a lot of recreation activities on the weekends, kept themselves really busy until this one event forced them not to. Moving into it and experiencing it and not running from it. Just lean into it. So when I'm sad, that means I feel sad. I just feel sad. I can't cry anymore. I have no more tears left. I believe that's because I have dry eye, actually. But I think that's because Christopher died and I cried them all out. Like, I 100% believe that. I can't cry because I have no tears left because they're all gone because I used them all up. I 100% believe that. At least that's true in my case. So I can't cry anymore, but I still feel sad and I still feel that searing pain when I think about that memory that flashed through my head and my bank account, and it's just gut-wrenching even now. It's still, and then there's this sense of shame, like I should have known better, like when you made mistakes with your children, and we all make them. There's no judgment here. We all do things that we thought we could have done better. Every single one of us. And you have to struggle with that too. And if you're lucky enough not to feel ashamed, I'm glad for you. The other thing that I would want you to know is that you will lose some relationships. Most, if not all of them. And that's painful. There was no one there. No one there. And it's easy to show up for the funeral. It's easy to make your little casserole and drop it off at the house. But you know what's not easy? What's not easy is showing up. Showing up and sitting with someone when the world has ended and you're sitting there crying your eyes out. And crying so hard you can't speak and you're blubbering and you're just angry and irritable and no one's there. And then you reach out to them and they don't take your call. And then you see online that they're home or they're out with people and they didn't invite you. My relatives did that to me. My freaking cousins. She lived less than 6 blocks away from me and never showed up. Ever. And because you're vulnerable and because you're hurting, you think that's about you. Right? We internalize it because that's where we are. So when people don't show up, and it's heartbreaking. Even now I think back and I'm like, how sad it was for me. And now I try to show up for people. But I don't show up at funerals. I don't show up with casseroles. I show up for you 2 months later, 3 months later. I keep in touch with you because that's when you need someone, not in the beginning, in the end. And I don't know if everybody experiences this, but we're going into the Christmas season. And I'll start talking about this again, talking about how to survive the holidays. But I quit getting invited to the holidays as soon as Christopher died. That was unexpected. It was seriously unexpected. It's my son that died. Yes, I am a counselor, but I was in no place to counsel you about your loss of my son. I just couldn't do it. Or counsel you about whatever was going on in your life that you felt the need to reach out. And that happened a lot too. It's like people just forgot. And this absolutely drives me crazy right now. Just happened today. It makes me angry. My family has decided that an appropriate way to deal with birthdays is to send a text to everybody in the family saying, wish so-and-so a happy birthday. Wish so-and-so a happy birthday. I refuse to participate in that nonsense. I just refuse. My children are, and Christopher would be turning 37. You know how many years when we were in the military that no one called and wished my kids a happy birthday? Lots of years. Do you remember his birthday now like I do? No. Is there a text going around saying today is Christopher's birthday? No, there's not. And I won't participate. Yeah, does that make me a bad person? Maybe. But it makes me an angry person because Christopher's still alive. Somewhere on the other side. I believe he's just as present here as he would be if he was just right here. And it's just frustrating to me. Also, one thing that's very surprising to me, but I'm realizing is that I've lost my compassion. I don't know if it's because I'm burnt out. I've had people tell me I shouldn't be doing this podcast because it keeps me in my grief. But that's also something else that they don't understand, is that you can't get away. There's no getting away from grief. You close your eyes and you dream about it. You go through your day. It's always there. Someone is always there. There isn't a day go by that I don't think about my grief. I struggle with the consequences of my grief. Or mourn who or what I could have been before Christopher died. And I'm realizing that I've lost my compassion. And it's weird because I could counsel grieving people all day long. But it's the other types that I struggle with compassion with. And I struggle with anger. And I'm just starting to realize that. It's like, don't come at me with that nonsense. That drama. I don't got time for that drama. I lost my child. And that's where I'm at. So if you have something that you want to add to this list, leave me a message. Let me know. What would you like people to know about grief? What would you tell them? Would you tell them the same things I did, or do you have things to add? Go ahead and add them. Send me messages, and I'll put it on my next podcast. And we'll talk about it. Maybe there's something that you're experiencing that I haven't experienced that other people need to hear about. I just know that I'm not the only one that struggles. And I've had people say, like someone said in a support group once, oh, I quit struggling after 3 years. And I'm like, did you? Did you really? Oh yeah, are you in that land of denial? There are some people that aren't very self-aware. So the whole idea of digging deep and looking at your grief and looking at how it impacts you is more than some people can handle. And that could explain why they say after a year or 2 or 3, they're over it. Because they covered it up in some way. Alcohol, drugs, antidepressants. They can do that sometimes. I hear that a lot from people that take medications. Is that I want to feel all my feelings, and if I take medications, I can't. Well, thank you for listening. I thought I'd go back to an episode of storytelling, and it just occurred to me. So I was thinking about what to talk about this week was, what do I want people to know? And so there you are. Those are the things that I would want you to know. Reach out to me on Instagram. Leave me a message. This is Christy Haver.